Gen AI is really supporting our speed to market. So we're massively leaning into that, and we've already seen some of that. It will start to help our clients really interact with our data, because data is quite complex and not everybody's a data scientist. Not everybody's got an analytical brain, and some people are more textual, some people are more image driven. So actually allowing that and allowing the data and Gen AI to turn briefs into data requests, all of that will help the industry.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Identity Architects, the InfoSum podcast that spotlights the leaders in the media industry shaping the future of data-driven advertising. I'm your host Ben Cicchetti, and this week I had the opportunity to sit down with Sarah Robertson, Director of Product at Experian. Together, Sarah and I discussed the impact of signal loss, how Experian is utilizing Gen AI today, the importance of prioritizing the consumer, and much, much more. Before we jump into that conversation, this is a reminder to hit that subscribe button to be alerted when new episodes of Identity Architects land. But without any further delay, here's my chat with Sarah. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Sarah Robertson, Director of Product at Experian. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to get to know you a little bit better, learn more about Experian. But for anyone who might be unfamiliar, can you just give us a quick introduction to yourself, but also to Experian?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Robertson. I head up product for Experian Marketing Services in the UK. And Experian Marketing Services covers a broad range of products, so from audience identity measurement in both data and platforms, and we support across the marketing ecosystem.
Excellent. I mean, that's the entire marketing mix there, so we've got a lot to cover, so This should be a really interesting conversation. But we'll start the way we always do, which is to get to know you a little bit better, starting with, what is your earliest memory of advertising?
So my first memory of advertising when I was growing up in the 80s, because I'm really that old, unlike today, most families sat down and watched their favourite show on TV when it was actually broadcast rather than on catch-up. So there was so much creativity around video ads. And that's how, I mean, there's so many classic ads that go on, but I remember on Bongo, I don't know whether anybody remembers that ad. I'm sure they wouldn't get away with that. They drink it in the Congo line. Where's the proof in that line? So it was just such a great ad and so fun when you're that age. But yeah, TV advertising and all of those sounds and videos that came out in the 80s.
Yeah. Classics. And yeah, it's a foreign concept, this idea of actually having to watch TV as it was broadcast.
Exactly. It's completely different now.
So if you take yourself back to that mindset, what did you want to be when you were younger?
So I wanted to do something on the stage. I actually wanted to be a singer, but I really can't sing. Okay. So it sort of like stopped that. I had absolutely no chance of that. So yeah, so then my other love, apart from singing badly, was maths and business, completely opposite ends of the scale. So that led me to do a stats degree and then into marketing from learning stats.
Oh, amazing. So what was your first job then in either marketing or media?
So I worked for BHWG, which was an agency in London. That quickly rebranded whilst I was there to Proximity. So I worked as a data scientist. And actually my first project that I worked on at BHWG at the time used Experian data. So weirdly, I've come full circle, which always amuses me. Working in an agency was a really, really good introduction to the world of marketing because you saw everything. So you worked with really good brands, you worked with some really inspiring people, and you worked across creative and data and media and planning. So it was a really good introduction into the world of advertising.
Yeah, it kind of gave you exposure to everything right at the start and kind of gave you that good bedrock, right?
Yeah.
What do you think it was that drew you into the marketing industry, and what do you think keeps you in it to this day?
So the level of innovation in marketing really keeps me here. So it's constantly changing. People are constantly looking for new ways of doing stuff, new ways of engaging with the consumers. So you never get bored, right? So there's always something new to try. And when I first started, it was when I started to realize that actually marketing is more than just an advert. There's psychology, there's data, there's technology, and now even like AI, there's geography, there's creativity. So it's a real blend of skills and of thought process. And you meet some amazing people, because actually it takes a lot of people to make the marketing industry and advertising industry tick.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess reflecting on kind of all you've learned during your career and all those people obviously you've had the opportunity to interact with, what advice would you give to someone that maybe is just starting out in their career in the marketing industry?
So research, so curiosity. So it's such a broad industry, as I said. So actually understanding consumer behaviors, everybody's a consumer. So marketing is around us every day. So curiosity is the key
Yeah.
thing, and retaining your curiosity enables you to innovate and continue to grow in your career.
Yeah, I completely agree with it. It's that ability to kind of, you never stop learning, right? And that ability to stay hungry for that knowledge is just, it's really,
Exactly.
really important. And yeah, that curiosity, I love that. A two-part question. What keeps you awake at night? And then what gets you up in the morning and motivated in the morning?
So I've talked a lot about innovation, and change is a big part of everybody's lives. Things are constantly changing. So I constantly have new ideas coming into my head, whether that be work or at home, what I can do for the house, where's my next holiday, all of those things. I'm always planning the next thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I always think about, like, when I wake up every morning, if you're planning something and things go wrong, there's always a new day. Like, there's always another dawn tomorrow. So keep trying, allow yourself to make mistakes, but keep pushing forward. So that's really what I think about every day.
Yeah, there's always another dawn tomorrow. I love that. That's
Yeah.
a great phrase. I like that. We obviously work in a very complex industry, and as you said, that ability to stay curious and continuously learn and research is incredibly important. But how would you describe what you do within media and advertising to a 10-year-old?
So I've got a 12-year-old, so
Okay.
I can relate to this question quite a lot. So I often explain around the adverts they see on YouTube. Like, those don't just pop up there. There is data that goes into those adverts. There's platforms. There's a whole marketing ecosystem around that. So I really tell them about that, and I tell my kids that I help design that. That's like the products that go into that make that more relevant to you. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's great. It's all the things that happen behind the scenes that people just see the creative and that's kind of the end result. Whereas it's all the elements that go in behind the scenes are the key parts that we need to educate people on for sure. So the final of our quickfire questions, and it's a personal favorite of mine, although I'm learning very quickly it's not a personal favorite of the guests that we get on the podcast, which is that if there was a song that was a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
So I really like the song Pharrell Williams, Happy, because I think actually staying happy and staying positive and that positive mindset in life really helps you. So that's a key song. What's yours?
I love that song. I think that's a great song. So I've never been asked on the podcast what my song would be. So you're completely catching me off guard. I would say "Unwritten" by Natasha Bedingfield is
Okay.
a song that I find really uplifting, motivating. This idea that your story is unwritten and it's your story to write. So I would go with that. But we'll add "Happy" to. We have a playlist on Spotify where we put everyone's choices.
Right.
So I'll put "Happy" on there, and everyone can enjoy that as well. That's great. So we'll move on to some of the more topic-related questions, some of the deeper dives into Experian and into our industry as a whole. And obviously, the thing that has dominated the headlines the most over the last couple of years already, but especially over the last few months, has been cookie deprecation. Obviously, Google back in July announced they would no longer deprecate cookies, that they were going to kind of give that power to consumers essentially through user choice. With that update, what's your take on this new reality that we're now in?
So I suppose we've got to lean into the fact that Apple did this a few years ago in terms of their cross-device tracking, and they gave consumers the power to opt out, and we saw cross-device tracking, like opt-outs, go between 60 and 70%. So we're expecting similar across the Google platforms, and it's absolutely the right thing to do, right? So actually consumers should be empowered to how they choose to utilize their data. So really that's the thought in terms of consumers, but effectively we should be planning for a cookie-free world anyway. We should be given that we need to be able to look at other methods and interoperable methods to be able to stitch consumer journeys together if they've consented for us to be able to do so. So again, it's thinking about the consumer. We know that businesses have accelerated this adoption of interoperable and privacy compliant identity solutions. So we've got those in the marketplace already. So we really need to lean into those. I think the other thing that it came to mind in July, it reminds us of the power that these big tech giants have over our industry. How many millions of pounds were spent on alternative solutions to cookies? And Google just changed their mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting moment, right? And I think the view that I had at the time was it largely changed very little, in my opinion, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
In that, yes, Google were no longer going to deprecate the cookie, but as you pointed out, we've seen the opt-in rates from other similar solutions. We already know Safari and Firefox are cookieless by default. Some of the largest high growth areas of media, retail media, CTV, gaming, and others are all cookieless by default. So we were kind of already in a cookieless ecosystem, as you said. So it changed very little other than, Google wasn't making the choice. Ad tech wasn't making the choice. It was actually going to be consumers that were going to make the choice, which I think you're exactly right. It's, that's probably the way it always should have been. And we should always be putting consumers first. So yeah, I think it's a great way to look at it. And obviously outside of cookies and that challenge, what other challenge do you see in the industry around identity and just signal loss as a kind of a larger topic?
Great question. So signal loss, and it again leads back to the control that certain organizations have over the signals. So to me, what we need to be really prepared to is actually utilize multiple solutions as an organization. So that's what we've started to lean into. So how can we collaborate across the ecosystem so that we can stitch together multiple signals, because we will lose signals and there will be inconsistency, and we know that. So exactly that. So actually, how do we evolve? How do we utilize the different channels? As you said, gaming don't use cookies, CTV don't use cookies. So exactly, like we need multiple solutions across the industry right now.
Yeah, completely agree. And Experian is one of those large companies that everyone has heard of, and there's a lot of trust built into that Experian brand, and it's obviously specifically for Experian Marketing Services in particular. What is Experian Marketing Services doing to help solve for some of these challenges that we're going to face?
Over the last sort of 12 months, we've been working on a solution called Consumer Sync. So our Consumer Sync solution really does what I said earlier around stitching together multiple signals so that we can understand a consumer. And the way that we've built the Consumer Sync product is we've looked at a household level. So we've thought about the household, and we've done that primarily for three reasons. Firstly, it's a bit more privacy centric than going down to an individual or a device. We obviously have all the devices within the household. Secondly, many devices are actually shared. A TV is shared, a PlayStation can be shared, a tablet shared, a laptop shared. All of those things are shared. The only thing that can be an exception is the mobile phone. And the other one is about I talked about consumer psychology in the questions earlier. Actually, many purchase decisions are made as a household. So even from what you're going to have for your tea, you talk to your partner about what you're going to eat, what you're going to buy, all of those things. You like holidays are constantly those conversations. So consumer psychology is around that sort of journey. So we built it in that way.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think outside of signal loss and cookie deprecation, another topic that has dominated the headlines for kind of the last 2 years, but very specifically over the last 18 months, has been retail media. And we talked about it a little bit earlier as kind of one of those already cookie solutions. What is Experian doing in that area, and how do you see it evolving over the next couple of years? And are we just kind of scratching the surface of the potential for retail media in the kind of the larger commerce media area?
So when I think about retail media, I think about it in several ways. So there's a retail media which is on site, so on the retailer's own website, where they act more as a publisher. Then you've got retail media, which is the classic retail media network. Then you've got the retail media organizations that are using sort of off-site open web video, but they're monetizing their data off their own website. So there's two different areas there. But both of those are really fragmented. If you think about a CPG brand, so that actually, do they want to talk to Sainsbury's and Tesco and all of those different organizations to run their campaigns? That might be fine on their own when they're looking to run a sales promotion with Tesco on Tesco's site. But when they're talking about how to utilize that data in the open web, that fragmentation can be really hard for those CPG brands to manage. So what we're looking at the moment is actually how can we support those retail brands democratize their data across the open web targeting. So that's definitely something that we're looking at the moment. The other thing that we've got the ability to do is like actually unauthenticated traffic. So before a user has identified themselves on the site, we can link their online signals to their offline data, and we can then pass those to say, actually, are you in market for a product? Because yes, you may go to a site, but you might not actually purchase. So how can they monetize their intent data as well? We've actually been working for several years for people like Boots, which again allows them to scale their audiences because they've only got a small proportion that's first party. They've got more users and doing audience extension for them. So several ways in terms of how Experian can support retail media networks. And also like overlaying our audience data. So Experian's really well known for our demographic data. So someone who buys Heinz ketchup, two people might buy the same bottle, they're not the same people. So how do you personalize an advert for that actual audience, for their audience? So, and that's another way that we're helping those retail media networks.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it's the amount of different parties that can get involved in that retail media mix, right? So it's not just the retailer, but as you say, it's the media owners that they might partner with. It's obviously the brand if they have first party data, and then it's incredible organizations like Experian that can bring that depth of demographic information and other kind of behavioral information to the table. And obviously central to that and essential to a lot of the topics we're talking about now, and obviously near and dear to InfoSum's heart, is the idea of data collaboration, which to me seems to be becoming the new bedrock for the industry. And everyone is looking at how do we collaborate more effectively. So through the lens of someone like Experian, how do you see the world of data collaboration evolving as we move forward?
So co-creation and the value in co-creation is massive. So brands can be competing or they can be complementary to each other, and actually combining those shared insights and that intersection of the different brands is really where we get power. But to be able to do that, you need a common identity graph. You need a safe place to do it, like InfoSum, which is why our partnership's really interesting, because actually you've got that security, that privacy compliant data sharing environment with the identity and the insights layer over the top. And then with the activation partnerships as well for those identity, that's really when we will start to put control back into some of the brands and the agencies and simplify the whole industry really, in terms of it's a really, really complex ecosystem, and actually putting that more control and reducing the number of steps for people to be able to monetize their data, democratizing their data assets, and also sharing their data with brands.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously products recently launched by Experian, and it's not every day that I get to speak to the person that kind of, as you said, is waking up excited about new products that are coming, new ideas that are coming. What other data-driven products are you going to be launching soon that maybe you can give us a bit of a preview or a teaser of?
So in a few weeks, we will be launching an extended capability into some key European markets. So we've predominantly focus on the UK, but we will have a solution that supports CTV primarily across France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, and Italy, which is really exciting. We're also developing a real-time API which will allow brands and publishers to utilize Experian audience and identity data on their platform for unauthenticated users in real time, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So we've just got the first speed test, and we're going to go into testing later on in this year with launch early next year. So yeah, loads of new stuff in terms of our digital and advertising products.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Well, people will have to, if you're not already following yourself and Experian on LinkedIn and so on and so forth to get updates on that. That sounds super exciting. And it's an interesting world how the product life cycle has evolved. And obviously that's going to be a huge part of your role. And it wouldn't be a podcast in 2024 if we didn't touch on generative AI. What, from your perspective, how is generative AI impacting that product life cycle at companies like Experian? And then more broadly, how do you see it impacting the marketing mix and the marketing industry as a whole?
Okay, so first part of that question, Gen AI is really supporting our speed to market. So we're massively leaning into that, and we've already seen some of that. It will start to help our clients really interact with our data because data is quite complex and not everybody's a data scientist. Not everybody's got an analytical brain, and some people are more textual, some people are more image driven. So actually allowing that and allowing the data and Gen AI to turn briefs into data requests, all of that will help the industry. So we're definitely seeing an acceleration in that. More broadly, content creation, like actually using Gen AI to create marketing collateral. That, I mean, we've utilized it. You put in a few bullet points, you get a great piece of text. In my head, I'm a maths person, so I know what I'm trying to say, but I just can't say it in the most eloquent way when I'm writing it down. So bullet points are the key thing, and you get a really good piece of work. I mean, we've tested it in some image generation. It leaves a lot to be desired, three-legged babies and the
Yeah.
like. So actually, it's not quite there, but on text, on development of code. So we've utilized it a lot on development of code as well. So that's really good. The key things that I think people have really got to remember about AI is that it still really requires quality data to train it. Um, if you don't do that, the algorithms are going to be wrong. So it's really important that people just don't run away with Gen AI and think it's going to be great, like the three-legged baby. And we need to be really careful about bias in models. So actually, again, the data might be good quality, but it might be highly biased. So we need to, depending on the use case, we need to really be careful about that going forward. But yeah, an audience creation. How do you create an audience? Like actually utilizing many data points to create an audience across many structured, unstructured data is going to be so exciting when we see that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, obviously the potential for it is almost limitless. And I think that's super exciting. And as you say, it's as much about the underlying data and the prompts that you give it to get the absolute best out of it. And I agree on the kind of the video and on the visual elements of videos and graphics and things like that. I think it's still a little bit off. But as as I've heard it said, is it's as bad as it's ever going to be now, and it's only going to get better. So as you say, I think the potential is kind of limitless there. Is there anything we haven't touched on? This has been such a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed learning more about Experian and you and getting your thoughts on kind of the industry. But is there anything we haven't touched on that you would like to touch on before we end things?
I think one of the things that constantly goes through my head is around the complexity that we have as an ad tech industry, I really can see that actually there's going to be some consolidation across the industry over the next few years. The buy side and platforms like InfoSum support this. The buy side is got to get closer to the supply side, right? That's just got to happen. And we're seeing that evolution. So that will happen. That'll be a reduction of players. And as an organisation, that's why we're looking to support across the ecosystem, because it's really important that we have our data and our capabilities across there, and high quality audience and identity solutions need to prevail, and they'll be still required across there. The other area that I don't think we really covered much is around measurement. And actually measurement is going to be key. And I think the clean rooms and the stuff that you guys are doing at InfoSum is really exciting to be able to lean into some of the measurement use cases as well. And those are the key things I don't think we covered. But I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I've loved this. It's super interesting. It's one of the biggest privileges I have now working at InfoSum is I get to host this podcast, right? And I get to meet incredible people like you who are just doing amazing things and such great thought leaders, people who are pioneering, driving our industry forward. So I just find that part of my job so enjoyable. So I really appreciate you being on the podcast. As I mentioned, that is what this podcast is about. It's about people like you who are pioneering new ways to deliver those data-driven experiences that we know can be so powerful. So when you look to people that you admire in the industry, who would you nominate for me to sit down and chat with on a future episode of Identity Architects?
There's so many people in our industry that are real pioneers. And I'm sure I'll insult someone by not mentioning their name. So I'm going to cover ad tech, brands, and supply tech. So I'm going to give you 3 names here.
Excellent.
So Amelia Waddington at Captify. I really like meeting. Like I've only met her over the last few years. I really like meeting another female product person. You don't come across this very much. She's very massy and very data and very savvy. Excellent. She's great. Patrick Zinger, I did a panel with him recently. He works at Heineken. He just talks sense, right? From a brand's perspective, he doesn't have huge amounts of first-party data. His opinions just really hit the mark with me. And then Dan Cohen, in terms of what they're doing at Sky, and how they've really taken sort of some of our data, lots of other providers, and really supporting the advertising agency to really create campaigns across their TV.
I love that. Those are great nominations, and we'll reach out to all 3 and get them on future episodes of Identity Architects. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for all you're doing at Experian, but also for the wider industry as we drive everything forward. And just really appreciate your time and for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Sarah for being on the podcast. I loved hearing how Experian is prioritizing the consumer, and as Sarah rightly puts it, consumers should be empowered. All that's left for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button to know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.